Good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thank you. Mr. Brett, would you give us an invocation this morning?
Certainly. Father, thank you for the many blessings you give us every day. Thank you for the wisdom that you try to impart to all of us to guide the future of our children, our young adults, at this critical time of their lives. Help us plan this next phase of our journey coming into fall with lots of new students, lots of new challenges. Be with us. Help us make wise decisions. And please continue to protect our men and women who serve overseas, who every day continue to face the dangers that so many of us forget about over here every day. We just go about our lives and we seem to sometimes not remember the sacrifice that is being made every day by our armed forces. Keep them in your protection. Keep them in the forefront of our minds and our prayers. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Law, preliminary matters or presentation of retirement.
We have one retirement resolution, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask Patricia Carruthers and her friends and family to come forward. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, whereas Patricia Carruthers began her career as a staff assistant in Central Records at the St. Petersburg College District Office in 1998, and whereas Ms. Carruthers, over the course of her career, has provided approximately 1.5 million transcripts to students, colleges, and employers, and whereas Ms. Carruthers has worked meticulously to ensure that each student she assists feels that his or her request is important and will be handled expeditiously. She exhibits profound patience and professionalism, and whereas Ms. Carruthers is recognized by her co-workers as dedicated, dependable, and always smiling, at times she has selflessly curtailed vacation plans to be available to students, and whereas Ms. Carruthers is wished every happiness in her retirement as she volunteers in the school system and spends time with her family and friends, now therefore be it resolved that the St. Petersburg College Board of Trustees and the total college community hereby recognize and appreciate the outstanding contributions to the college by Patricia Carruthers and extend to her our best wishes for enjoyment throughout the years ahead. This resolution adopted and approved by the Board of Trustees this 21st day of August, 2012. Hear, hear. Congratulations. Very nice. Let's do this. Step over here. Okay, just this. Say a quick word.
I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity. My whole family went to SPC, and now my oldest granddaughter starts today.
Ah, wonderful. The I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, the scholarship presentation, Dr. Furlong, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lang, I'm not sure who's.
Dr. Furlong will be here with you. Dr. Furlong?
He's got the money. Members of the board, I'm pleased to be able to be here today on behalf of the Florida State College Foundation. I can't help, though, when I look at the board, think back at the beginnings of this foundation. It started through the idea, foresight, and impetus of Dr. Phil Benjamin, who was one of yours. He chaired this board several times before going to the state system. It started with a $2 million contribution from Bank of America, and it's grown now to a $20 million foundation. Chancellor Hanna has released for scholarships this year $825,000 to the system. The beauty of the State College Foundation is that its principal goal are donors who would only give to a statewide type of charity, as opposed to being concerned with the individual interests of each individual college so that they would not run into conflicts. And it has worked beautifully. We have donations today from 3 separate charities, totaling for St. Petersburg College $43,750. Our own Dr. Furlong is the chair-elect of the foundation, and so we couldn't have found a better person to bring those checks to you. Tom?
Thank you, Joe. I just, with several not so new board members now, but what Joe said so nicely was also very controversial in the beginning. We have to be very careful with this foundation not to bump into the local ones. There was opposition to having a state foundation because, as you know, in your private lives, you can ask for $500 and eliminate $1 million gift if you're not careful. And so we've been very careful at the state level to just go for the national corporations, for large grants, et cetera. And today, as Joe said, we have a nice nursing allied health scholarship check of $12,661, and this one is from the Florida Blue Cross. It's now called Florida Blue Scholarship. A first generation in college Bank of America Dreammaker Scholarship at $37.78, and finally a first generation Helios Scholarship for $27,311. So these checks are going out to the other colleges today, and we hope to do even more next year. But thank you for the opportunity, and here's your checks.
Good.
Thank you. Any comments from any board members, Mr. Brett?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have one item that I need to bring to your attention. I was at the board meeting last night for the Policy Institute, and they are doing great things under the leadership of David Clement. And one item that came to our attention as we were reviewing the terms of the various board members, right now we have 6 board members, and we are looking to increase the number of our board members. But one of the items that came up was the fact that when I was asked to be a part of that board, I was asked to serve because of my role as being the current chair of this board. And so now, as I have moved out of the chair's position on this board, it is now your responsibility, Mr. Chair, to either serve on the board, representing this board, serve on the policy board, or to designate someone on your behalf.
I designate Terry Brett to serve on this board.
Second.
Do I hear a motion?
I
Is that
knew-
a motion,
I-
Mr. Fife?
Make a motion that Terry represents the board
Is there a
of
second?
trustees.
Discussion, please? I knew I should have thought better about how I was going to word that.
Are you okay with doing that? Continue to serve, Mr. Brett?
That's
I mean, it's a good thing, but I just don't want to, my time is short, and I just really don't want to overcommit.
Very good.
So we have a motion, and it's been properly seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposing, Mr. Brett will continue to serve with the Policy Institute, and they're doing great things.
Great. Okay. That's all.
Mr. North, do you have anything?
No, I'd like to thank Dr. Brett, I'm sorry, Terry Brett.
I'll take whatever I can get.
I had
Chairman
the
Fung.
opportunity to attend the opening of the Collaborative Center of Emerging Technologies on Fridays, and I would encourage my fellow board members, if you have an opportunity, what a cool place with a lot of cool stuff. And the work that they have done and the partnerships they've created, outstanding. And it was, Ken Burke was also in attendance, and I know that my time here has been short-lived, and he was a big proponent of that. So it was nice to see Ken back to see the opening, but great job by all who were involved in the whole process.
Anybody else? Mr. President, just very quickly, I want to thank Mr. Lang and especially Dr. Furlong for continuing to stay involved. We appreciate all you do for us, and it just shows again this morning all the things that you guys stay on top of and that you're involved in. Other than that, I think we can move forward to Dr. Law.
Mr. Chairman, let me just add my thanks for the work that was done for the Center for Collaborative Technologies. We, of course, the governor had committed to come, and then at the last minute had to change. We went ahead with the thing. I'm informed that the governor will come and make a visit, and I trust that will take place. I was impressed with the industry partners. Any number of our industry people came up to me to outline how many jobs they are seeing available now or coming over the horizon for the kind of training that we're doing. So I suspect in very short order we will be seeing that pipeline directly through to manufacturing jobs and across the board. So congratulations to all of us for that. Let me take 1 second, if you would, on last Thursday we opened the year with our Welcome Back for faculty. It was a really nice event to position ourselves for the key issues that we face this year. There are a number of issues that go to the heart of the faculty experience here. I thought that the team did a nice job setting a very positive tone without being Pollyanna about the nature of the challenges that we face. Again, we'll continue to invite. It's a long morning for everybody, but we've got it worked out where you can make a gracious exit after about an hour. So if we can, as we go forward with that, if you'd like to be part of that in the future, I would encourage you to do that. Can I take care of 2 other little matters? In the past, because of his great interest in the American Community College Trustees Association, we have always had a number of board members who want to go. If you would like to look at your schedule and make the trip to Washington, it is the convention of your colleagues, the American Community College Trustees. It's generally a pretty, Mr. Chairman, I know you were there with me last year. Mr. Fine, I think you joined us. In fact, that was maybe your first event. It's a pretty good event if you want to get plugged into national policy on trustees things. If you would just make your choice one way or the other, it's, we're all busy, and we'll organize our schedule to get there if we have to. And then lastly, locally, we've got our friends at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg, are celebrating their big event, the opening of their new center, and a salute to a good friend of this college, and certainly that college, Gus Stavros. We have, of course, committed to a table, and I certainly would like to invite any and all of you to be part of that. If you just take a look at your schedules, and if you'd like to be part of that, please come. You should know that I am scheduled for Friday to sit down with the new president of USF St. Pete and initiate that relationship. It's a first-class relationship, and I don't expect that will change. Mr. Chairman, let me take 1 second, if you would, on the board meeting. We've got I didn't think we did a very good job for you on that construction issue last month. It wasn't presented in exactly, it didn't bring any great, it didn't help you do your job, we didn't portray it right. We've revamped, and today we will present you with what I think are the metrics for why we're headed down this field. We need to spend some time to make sure that we don't just focus on a building, that we focus on why we're doing this building and what
Sure.
it looks like. And I think that would be helpful. Next month, we'll come back with some revised drawings. But if you have it in two parts, then I think everything can make sense, okay? So
Okay.
we heard you, and I thought we had stepped past you, and we're backing up on that, okay? And then secondly, enrollment is soft as of this morning and yesterday morning, and we want to provide you with that detail, but immediately provide you with the remedial strategies we have for both the budget and the operation parts of that. So we
Okay.
have some good information for you today. The decisions in front of you today are not, they're not the most important thing. It's the framework for some key downstream decisions, and that's what we're working on today.
Sure.
Okay?
Well, I'd like to add one more thing, Dr. Law. You know, we have a lot of bosses, the board members, when we go out in the community, and one of which I see here that I don't normally see. She gives me advice on just about everything. She works for us in our library. Miss Betty Gaston, would you stand up? I just want y'all to see, because this lady will call me, and she makes sure I'm on point about everything. Welcome. All right, we're moving
Thank
right
you.
along. Mr. Lang, do we have a report this morning?
We have nothing to report this morning, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, minutes?
You have to do the minutes.
Oh, did we not do, I'm sorry. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from July 17th?
So moved.
Second it.
It's been properly moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposing. We'll move back to Ms. Gardner.
Mr. Chair, I have no report this month.
Okay. All right, Dr. Carney. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Law, my colleagues here in the audience. Good morning to each of you. This morning I want to share and highlight with you about the rollout pilots for the individualized student learning plan. And as you know, this is one of our highest priorities, aimed at moving the needle on student success, moving students towards graduation, progress, and walking across the stage. This morning I want to highlight the major actions that we've taken in the past 6 or more months, the lessons that we've learned, and the major next steps. The individualized student learning plan that you see here on the screen, and you also have a copy in front of you. I apologize for the small size of it. But this plan is for a real student. And student is Joyce Wenzel, as you can see at the top there. She's a part-time student at the Clearwater campus, and she has decided to major in Associate of Arts with a concentration in biology. She has entered 33 courses into her plan, covering 9 semesters, or terms as we call them here internally, over a period of 4 years. She will need to complete 79 cumulative credit hours to complete her degree, and her goal is to complete the AA degree and then go on to pursue a bachelor's degree in biology. And in the case of Joyce, once the individualized student learning plan is initiated for a given student, we have named it, from the student's perspective, My Learning Plan. And as you can see here, for the first time, a complete roadmap to graduation for this student that can be saved, printed, and accessed online anytime and from anywhere. And more importantly, this actual plan that you're seeing is in our currently in-service system and part of the My Learning Plan feature set version 3, which was placed in service on July the 9th, just about 7 weeks ago. The My Learning Plan 3 feature set is now available to all students to map out a similarly complete path to their degree and their graduation's goals. Now let me share with you quickly some of the major steps taken, lessons learned, and next steps. We've conducted 2 rollout pilots on the campuses, and the major purposes of those pilots were to achieve a deeper awareness and familiarization on the part of selected faculty and frontline student advising staff with the learning plan technology and processes. Both pilots included faculty and students enrolled in the SLS 1101 course and advisors who were assigned to support each class section of those courses. Second major purpose was to test and perfect the strategies for introducing the students in the SLS 1101 classes to the learning plan concept, its value to student success, and for getting the students to participate in, take advantage of, and take ownership of their individualized learning plan. Third major purpose was to learn from the pilots and to identify and share process efficiencies in order to achieve continuous improvements in the overall operational strategies relative to faculty, staff, and student experiences in the use of the individualized learning plan. What you can also see on the screen there, top left, is that we conducted surveys, student focus group sessions to gather information about the pilot experiences, and we've shared findings, tips, and techniques to our colleagues college-wide. Through all of this, we've learned a lot about the strategy, the technology, the processes. We've learned that the system works as designed, although we're going to add some more enhancements to it. We've learned how to assign the advisors to the classrooms and which visits to the classroom they should go. They go to the classrooms on the 3rd week of the class to introduce the learning plan concept, how you do the learning plan, and the faculty in that 3rd class meeting make the assignment for the students. The advisor goes back on the 8th or 9th week of the class, and at that point, the student actually completes the plan and enter it into our system. We learn the importance of the faculty at reminding the students, those students who have not gone to see an advisor in the intervening week, the importance of going to an advisor, getting help on mapping out their plan if such help is needed. And as you can see there, we have shared the information college-wide. The success triangle, in our pilots, we worked with an advisor, the faculty, and the student. And my colleague, Dr. Joseph Smiley, has put together what he calls the success triangle. It's taken it to another level to include the advisor, the faculty, a mentor, and the student. And so I'm hoping that Dr. Smiley will come forward to this group and present that success triangle. Let me close, Mr. Chairman, by sharing our major next steps and our conclusions. As you can see on the screen, we're already working on the next version of the My Learning Plan feature set, version 4. We're targeting that to be ready in October. That will include improved navigation for the students. Also, it'll include the My Career feature set, which my colleague, Dr. Jim Oliver, is going to be talking about in just a few minutes. And also, we will roll out in January the Student Life Plan feature set, version 1, which will include the student retention statuses, the school life balance calculator, and the credit hour retention model that Dr. Cooper and her team shared with you at the July board meeting. So we know what we have to do now to achieve continuous improvements. We are very pleased with the pilots, and we are prepared for the fall, and we expect even greater outcomes from the students in terms of use of the individualized student learning plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions?
I have a couple. Dr. Carney, how do new students learn about the MLP? How are they introduced to it?
Oh, there's lots of ways to do it. There on our webpage, for example, we've recreated a student information center, which talks about the learning plan. And on that page also, we have created 44 sample plans that the students can see And I can tell you, when they see this pathway, they are glued onto it. They have an idea then how to get to this pathway. We have created tutorials, both written tutorials and video tutorials. In fact, you can see on the screen right up there, it says tutorials. If you open that tutorial button, a list of tutorials will come out on the learning plan, on my graduation status, both visual and written documents to explain it.
So the question, maybe I didn't ask it quite right. Is it a voluntary process or is it involuntary?
That's a great question.
Okay.
In the SLS 1101 classes that I've talked about,
SLS is,
that class, that stands for Student Life Skills,
I got you.
but the course itself is called the College Experience. And if you look at this real closely, that student, she took the college experience, Joyce. And in that course, it is a requirement to complete the learning plan. And go ahead, Dr. Law.
No, I was going to say, the orientation now includes the learning plan as part of that. Then students, the first rollout was for the students, the highest need students who are in 2 or more developmental courses, and they then take the college success courses, the SLS course. So at the front door, we have about 2,000 students who are, it will be a mandate though. You have to do this to successfully complete it. Once we know how to implement it, all the bugs are out of it, then it will become, you'll have to have a learning plan on file in order to register. So that's where we're headed for this.
And then, do you have a process in place where you can access the metrics of how many times a student looks at the plan, how many, what kind of review they do? Is there any other type of input?
As a part of our feature, version 3 feature set, we created 6 metric reports that captures for us the number of students that completed their plans, the number of students that completed partial plans. We can count the number of terms that the students actually enter courses into, and we can, there's a save and done button that indicates that the student has completed their plan, and we've captured all of that information, sir.
And then you rolled it out to a limited group up in Tarpon Springs. Was that my understanding?
The first pilot we had included 2 campuses, Tarpon Springs, in the spring of 2012, and then the downtown center. And then the summer pilot was college-wide. We had 23 sections college-wide, over 400 students, and there were 23 faculty involved in that. So we're on top of the numbers. This fall, we're expecting close to 2,000 students to take the SLS 1101.
That's fantastic. Nice job.
Thank you, sir. There's a lot of people behind me who's had a big hand in this.
Certainly. That's a big step, though.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Carney.
Good morning, members of the board, Mr. President. I'm here this morning to talk about career services. And I want to thank my colleague, my good friend and colleague, for teeing this up, because these 2 services are very much connected. It started about 8 months ago. We are participants in a large national survey called SESI. It's the Community College Survey of Student Engagement, to determine how students are engaged and how they're using services across the campus. And what the SESI survey revealed to us is that career services were viewed as very important by the students and by the faculty and staff, but they were not particularly well used or well regarded at St. Petersburg College. So we formed a large faculty, staff, and student task force to look at the options that we had for improvement. The biggest aha, you form these groups and they move along and they tell you what you already know, but the biggest aha for that group, I think, was when a student got up and said, I was really surprised at how much St. Petersburg College had to offer in the career services area. I have a friend who's actually paying for services outside the institution for career services. And so it was very clear to us that we needed to increase our services principally through integration with our academic advising, where they were separate in the past, and the visibility and use of those services by our students. So we decided on a new start, the first bullet on this slide. we decided to move to a developmental advising model, away from a prescriptive advising model. Kind of gets to your point that you raised earlier. Instead of a student coming in and us using the kind of egg timer approach where we say, okay, let's fill in the blanks. We actually started by exploring with the student where he is or where she is and where she wants to go. Career advising, including exploration and definition, is one side of the same coin as academic advising. We figured that if a student didn't know where he or she wanted to go, then we weren't going to be able to get them there or really anywhere. We started with 7 questions on an intake form. You've heard from Dr. Law and read in the literature that we're moving to a student coaching system. That'll be another presentation for another day. But we decided this was too important a venture to wait for the student coaching system to be totally implemented. So we addressed 7 questions. We started, again, with a pilot at the Seminole campus on the 1st of July and moved to all the campus on the 1st of August, where we asked incoming students, first-time college students that came to our advising centers, we asked them a series of 7 questions on how certain they were about their academic program and how certain they were about their career choices. And based on those 7 questions, we determined whether the student was green, they knew where they wanted to go and how they needed to get there in terms of their academic program, whether they were yellow, in some variation they weren't sure of their academic program or their career, or weren't sure how their career and academic program connected or what program to take to get to their career, or red, which is an increasingly large number of students. They don't know where they want to go and they don't know how to get there. And then we moved, and I'm going to focus I'm going to move to the 3rd bullet. We moved to a new service model. Organizationally, as I noted, we needed more support and more visibility and more integration of services. So now we have a new model that we've instituted in our advising and career services area. One of our advisors has a specialty in career services, and we also have an outreach specialist that we brought in through Perkins funding to work specifically with our students in workforce programs. We have a more integrated and robust presence of career services in the SLS course that we've mentioned earlier. In point of fact, the SLS students in their 2nd week in that course take an instrument that focuses on where they want to go with their career so that we can begin working with them. And probably most importantly, green, yellow, and red. We make sure that the students who are yellow work with our career information specialist and in red with our career counselor to make sure that they don't go an extra semester without knowing where they want to go. We make that referral immediately upon that first contact. In order to do these, we've brought some new tools on board. Really pleased that we've been able to support as part of our strategic initiative in this area 2 new tools that work with career services. First is Focus 2. That's that instrument that I mentioned we're using in the SLS class. It's available to any student at any time. And certainly if we find a student who feels, or we feel, or they feel that they're not clear on where they're going, they can take this extremely sensitive Focus 2 instrument. It's an online, integrated, self-guided career and educational planning system. It inventories students' interests, skills, personality, and values. And as I said, this is done in SLS 1101 and with any other student who we feel may need those sorts of tools. The second set of tools is called Optimal Resume, and it's a collection of tools to help students secure employment during college and after graduation. And it includes 7 tools: a resume builder, a cover letter builder, an interactive interview coach, an online career portfolio, an online video resume, online recruiting through a job bank, and live webcasts on a variety of topics, including virtual career fairs. So we think we've got the right organization with the right people, using the right tools, all interested and focused on student success, and we think that's going to make the world a difference. Now, this is just not a Seminole initiative. This is a college-wide initiative. Mr. Brock worked with me on a task force, and all of the provosts have worked together to make this, to roll out this new system, which we think is going to be pretty terrific. Questions?
Yes. So this particular process that you put together will go in place prior to the Dr. Carney's MLP. Is that correct?
Actually, they're inextricably intertwined. We're working on a series of initiatives that all work together to focus on student success. So the student, in order to develop their academic plan, they obviously need to know where they're going in terms of their career plan. And so when a student comes in and works with an advisor, they are actually working on both of those. And the SLS class becomes the nexus point. I mean, you can do it in a number of areas, but the nexus point, the students take the career services module on week 2. They start the individual learning plan on week 3. And they work through those in tandem throughout the course of the semester, along with a number of other, and Dr. Smiley can speak to, a number of other tools like note-taking and critical thinking and other skills that we know that students need in college.
Okay. So, Dr. Long, these programs were developed in order to increase the, I don't know what else to call it, the return rate of students.
That's
right?
exactly right.
So how are you going to measure whether or not these programs are successful?
Oh, well, we actually have started the metric of saying, okay, we know who's in those courses and why they are in those courses. And then we can look back to say, what was it before we did that? We can look at last year when we weren't doing this, and then we'll measure the success of this as we move forward in this semester. But the goal is very clear, as you've said, Mr. North. If the students don't get through these courses, they can't go on to the rest of the curriculum. And this is where we were losing students at rates that were far too high. So we've put we put a great deal of our energy at the front door to bring, I think, the appropriate tools. And we'll just report back what the success was. I mean, you know, we just know that this is where we were losing students, and we didn't know we were losing them is the problem. They walk off before we've had any chance to talk with them. So the third piece was, again, the early alert system, so that we're touching this group of students regularly in the first 3 weeks, and a lot of work. Pretty purposeful to try to address what we think is the underlying weakness of the type of education we do with open access.
That's pretty impressive. I think it's true. I can't wait to see the results.
Thank you.
Dr. Long?
Sir.
We're putting a lot of resources into advising career or counseling and things like that. What are we doing for the professional development for those that are actually delivering the services? Because, as you might suspect,
Great.
that is one of the concerns. You know, as soon as I became a board member, it's like a lightning rod for complaints. And and the one that I'm getting more is not that they're not accessible, is you know what's actually going on in those sessions, and occasionally misinformation, and you know.
And we shared one this week, by the way, we were able to touch it. So here's what happens. We now have, first of all, we have a tool. We should not have students saying, I wasn't told, or I misunderstood, or anything else. We now have a place to document those discussions, and we think that'll cut a lot of the problems in half. Again, you've raised sons and daughters, I've raised sons and daughters. There's always two sides to that. But they need to be served, so let me make that point. Secondly, though, we have a very strengthened protocol on providing training for, we did 3 levels of training. Those of us who don't talk directly to students day to day got a very overall view of everything.
Right.
Then there were 2 levels below that of detailed focused training in the use of these tools and the way we will be integrating all of these things. And we have executed those plans with the frontline people through that. Along the way, we recognized that, like many other things, we had dispersed the training across 3 or 4 parts of the organization, and we now have centralized all that with a much more rigorous and defined training plan, consistent across all ways. So I think we've taken the sets. We've actually revamped a location here at the district office to have a much strengthened ongoing training pool. But you hear some enthusiasm in my voice because this is where I have missed it in many times in the past, is to get a good idea and then not follow through with the appropriate training or execution. And this time I think we've paid a lot of attention to training. That level 1 training, we've already put 2,000, everyone who was not a faculty member went through the same training rigor during the month of July, late June and early July. We did every staff person through the very same training across the entire college. And that's really the first time that's happened. So
I think we're on target, because that's the biggest complaint
Yeah.
of running a secondary school, is the lack of advising in the higher ed as we, hold their hands at a little prep school, and when they hit university levels. And I think St. Pete College is right on target, putting such an emphasis on that, because we do lose kids, not here, but all over the place, because we don't put an emphasis on advising them after all the hand-holding that mommy and daddy do until they get 18 years old.
Well, and I think the career piece is fundamental. You know, in the end, it's hard to keep going to English courses if you don't know why you're in college and where you're headed. I think we see students lose heart after a certain point. So our game plan, you know, we've shared with you what we're calling the 5x180, 5 major initiatives, 180 days to get the execution in place, and you see it unfolding. I think we're on track with the execution of the 5 major initiatives that you supported in the budget.
Any more questions? Thank you, Dr. Oliver. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. North.
One more. Dr. Law, how will the board be notified about the, in other words, are you going to provide a monthly metric, a quarterly metric?
We're very anxious to share with you what's working, what's not working, because we're going to make this work. But yes, we'll give you, every month we should be able to give you some metric of where it goes. And then it's certainly summative at the end of the semester. We either kept more students in, and we have how many plans were in place and where we go with those students. So,
Yeah, so
we'll
maybe
be
at the,
happy to bring those to you every month.
once a semester is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Morning, come on up, Ms. Phoenix.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Phoenix, and I'm the newly elected chair for the Career Service Employee Council. I'd like to take a few minutes this morning to share the successes that we've had over year 1 and where we're heading in year 2 for the Career Service Employee Council. Accomplishments in year 1, we finalized the compensation and classification study, which validated that we are offering competitive salaries, a competitive salary structure, and that we have clear pathways to growth for the employees in the career service structure, which was a very big deal. It took well over a year to get that done, didn't it? We also worked on resolving floating holiday work requirements, and we're currently working on initiating professional development courses. We slotted 723 budgeted career service employees, and they completed their professional development training in the 5x180 scheme. Everyone, as Dr. Law mentioned, has gone through the level 1 training, and we're offering a much more detailed level 2 and level 3 training for more of the frontline staff. At All College Day, we presented one session last year in which we did a SWOT analysis to assess the strengths and weaknesses that we have, any opportunities or threats to success for career service staff members. And then we met with VPs and tried to implement campus solutions to improve the overall sense of how the career service staff is perceiving and relating to the student success on campus. And the last thing that we tried to implement in year 1 was we wanted to bridge the gap. We wanted to increase awareness of the CSCC committee, and we wanted to make people aware of the goals and the understanding that we're here as a group to represent career service staff and do whatever it takes to implement their success, which will improve the success of the college. In our goals for year 2, I've really been looking at attempting to expand our presence at All College Day. I would like to offer at least 2 or 3 sessions, one which includes the original SWOT analysis, so we can revisit what our strengths and weaknesses are and our opportunities and expand on what we found out from the meeting last year. I'd also like to include an additional 1 or 2 sessions which will share and explore the opportunities for professional development at the career service level, and we'll be doing that in conjunction with the professional development department and human resources. The second focus here is I'd like to formulate a comprehensive in-house marketing strategy which will get the word out and give more of a presence to the Career Service Council on site, on campus, and help the employees connect with their site representatives and bring forward some of the issues and concerns that they may have so that we can move through those and improve our relationships between different campuses, employees, HR, and the like. I'd also like to increase our workshop participation by career service staff, and in allowing our career service staff to recognize that professional development is for everyone, and that each and every one of us play a role in our own professional development. And if we take advantage of the courses that we have offered here, then that itself will improve the success of the college as well. We'd like to establish a career service emeritus, which is something that they have at fall faculty, I believe. And we'd like to do that. We'd like to create a venue for recognition of outstanding career service staff and give them something back for what they've been giving us. And I have two other points that I think are really important. We'd really like to develop a welcome team, someone that would, on each campus, that would help to guide and cultivate new employees through their relationships with mentoring and kind of like a buddy system, to where when you come into the college, you can be guided and mentored by someone who's been here and can help you navigate through all of the acronyms, the new culture, and all of the environment here, so that you can successfully portray yourself in a way and evolve in a way that will lead to success, which will lead to success for the students as well. And then the last thing, which I think is really important, is we'd like to see if we can get a volunteer group of career service staff, members of the CSEC, and implement this group of volunteers to be on each campus during the first week of class, maybe to hand out maps, water, any kind of encouragement that might be needed, so that the students can get to class ready to learn and fully supported by everyone at the college. And those are our goals for this year. Any questions?
Any questions, board members? It's a great plan.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
All right. The old business, Dr. Law, we're gonna, I guess, review the Midtown program.
Yes,
Thanks.
this is what I mentioned it early on, so Kevin, if you would come forward, let Kevin handle it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman,
Good morning.
members of the board, Dr. Law, colleagues. This morning, we're going to present some education specs or metrics, as Dr. Law mentioned earlier, just to give you an idea of what we need to look at prior to moving forward. This is an overview of what you'll see today, some student demographics, looking at some buildable space, estimated capacity, what it could possibly look like. You'll see some sample photos there, and then some other considerations moving forward. The first slide you see are the demographics, compares the current Midtown demographics to college-wide demographics. If you look closely under ethnicity, okay, you'll see some stark contrasts on the Midtown campus as compared to college-wide. There are some differences in how the ethnicity looks there. Also, the age grouping. If you look down there, age group, we have a large cluster of students in that 26 to 36 age group. The maximum funded square feet for the project is 45,000 and 3 stories. That's as large and as high as we can go with the project. For space utilization, this is some idea or percentages of what the space might look like in a 45,000 square foot project and how it would be assigned.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I interact here and help bring forward the key points? So we have 28, 38, 43, 15, 30. So about 60% of the space is devoted to classroom or direct student support and counseling, right? That's the library learning support, the laboratories, and the classrooms, and that totals right at 60%. The remaining 40% has to be distributed to all of the mechanical,
Sure.
circulation, and some of the other student services and others. So this is what we're trying to make sure we're clear about
as to what has to end up in this building if it's going to be an effective learning resource. And that looks like a good start. That
So-
looks to me like a good distribution.
I guess it says classrooms 1,025 square feet equals 40 seats.
That, just to give you a notion of how big a classroom is. A classroom
Okay,
is just
all right.
at 1,000 square feet.
That's not the
okay?
amount of classroom space we have.
No, that's one
That doesn't make
classroom.
sense.
By the numbers, again, before you start wedging them in, and this
Sure.
one's 36, but we generally don't go above 40, and by state law, this would be what we would want to look at for a classroom space. The current space, by the way, and we have a descriptor of some of the current space, we've got 6 classrooms, but they're all only about half that size. So don't get, one is not equal to one
Yeah.
in that, okay?
Can I ask
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Norman.
what, back to
back.
the previous slide, could you explain to me your 60/40 analysis? Because I missed that, and I'm not sure that I understand what you were saying.
If you start by saying, we literally start by saying what would fit on the site that we wanted, and how much can we build there? What meets our needs, okay? And there's some height restrictions,
Yeah.
and there's some footprint restrictions, okay? So 45,000 square feet and 3 stories was sort of the working premise for what we had to build with. Now you say, within 45,000 square feet, how are you going to distribute the space? Well, clearly, learning space, if you're building a campus, learning space is first and foremost, right? So X number of classrooms, X number of science labs, X number of library learning support space, those kinds of things. That's a start to get a sense of, priority 1 would be plain vanilla, straight up learning. Students come, they take a class, they get support, they do that. Then you start saying, so then what remains would be the counseling area, the career area, you have to have some faculty offices. You work really hard to minimize the mechanical, the circulation, the overhead spaces. And I was simply looking and saying, okay, 15% of what we have currently in our working plan is library learning support, 15% is science laboratories, and 28% is the classroom spaces. So you're right at 60% in the basic learning modules before you get to the counseling centers, the offices, and the circulation is going to be about 15% of your total space, just to put stairwells, libraries, those sorts of things. You've got, you've all built buildings, you know how this works. I mean, that's where you don't want to start, though, is by building really nice stairwells and then find out you can't afford the classrooms, okay? Right. So your guidance last month caused us to go back and say, we have not had this discussion with you. We want you to know how our thinking is going to put together an effective campus to meet student needs. So please keep those questions, but this is where we find ourselves trying to shoehorn everything into 45,000 square feet.
Got it. So and I don't know when is the appropriate time to ask this, but.
Right now.
All right. On this particular campus, this investment by the college, what is it you expect to accomplish? I assume it has to do with increased student population and increased hours, but why do you think that?
Well, the first slide is probably the instructional one. You know, reaching into the minority community, in this case the African American community. There are some special needs students. We're trying to make something that is a place where students can not have to take a bus every time they want to get to a class. They don't have to come all the way across town. We can build something in the community that gets students started. I think there's a certain community aspect of a community college. That is, we help change the sociology of the communities we serve at the same time. So we're trying to create a vibrant center for education in a community that certainly can benefit from all the encouragement we can give in education. So that's the high moral ground to start off with. Then we want it to be, Midtown is the heart of the old black experience in St. Petersburg. When we were a segregated community, that was the robust center of the black community. And it deteriorated
as a function of integration. And then it went through some really tough times. And we're finding that, that there's a great interest in having a local place where students can reinvigorate a college career, can walk to it, can get a full range of services, and get started. So you see, we've thought through some of that.
Dr.
Deborah?
Long, can I just give
Please, you've been-
some background? If Dr. Furlong will come up for 1 second, I think he can help answer this question as well. There was a time when, Mr. North, we put this down there as a site. And during that period of time, there was a lot of controversy centered around whether it would work. I think Mr. Brett was very much a part of that discussion, as well as Mayor Baker and Go Davis and some other folks. But I'd like Dr. Furlong to talk to you about the growth in that site. It was the largest growth that we had seen on any campus of students coming to school, first-time students coming back to school and back to college. Now, the economy had, I think, something to do with that a little bit. But more importantly, there was a large growth of individuals who came back to school because it met the needs of them being able to get their young people or their kids to some type of facility that would care for them, and then also the transportation needs were no longer an issue for them to go back to school. But if you would talk about that just for 1 second, Dr. Furlong, I know you have some information on that. And the only reason I asked that, Dr. Law, is because prior to you getting here, he was very involved in that discussion.
I'm fine.
Just, you're catching me cold, but it was so important. I think it's all there. Very quickly, when I arrived in 2001, it was really confused whether we really wanted to go downtown at all. And we had a very small presence. If I remember, it was like 150 students. And part of the problem was there was an informal understanding that if we were going to do bachelor degrees, we would leave downtown and midtown alone. We would start developing our thing. USF St. Pete would develop downtown. I was really surprised as a new member of the college community at that strategy, because a community college does downtown, does something like our midtown. And over my 10, 12 years here, initially, we tentatively put somebody in as a CEO down there. The numbers just took off. The only place at the college that was growing as fast as the bachelor was downtown. Percentage-wise, they grew very similarly. Then we started to back off again in terms of we had built up that little building, and that's about what we'd have. Downtown, there was always the possibility down the road of doing something structurally. But there was just a gap there. And I, just as somebody from a Tallahassee person really who came here 10 years ago, when Dr. Law came in and we started talking about we are built, it is firm, we are doing it, and now we're talking about a facility. Just the attitude and the excitement down there is really obvious to me. And as you look around the state, as I work with the other 27 colleges, most community colleges have a spot like this, and where you try to, we have several, but this is the big one where we have a chance. And the one other thing I could throw out, when I first got here, there was an understanding that all the College of Ed would be at Tarpon Springs, and other degrees would be at other places, the bachelor degrees. And it took about a month when the community came to me and said, this is just wrong. You've got to address the African American community in the southern part of the county as well. And if you put all the College of Ed in Tarpon, they are not going to get to Tarpon Springs to go to your new College of Education. So within the first year, we decided to have a total program at Gibbs and a total program in Tarpon, and both were equally successful. So I don't know if there's anything else. And that's kind of,
Just wanted that for background, because I knew you were involved in that. I
exciting to
appreciate
me
it.
watching these guys take off.
Well, I want to make sure that the question I have is addressed, because it's not, the question isn't whether or not it's a worthy project or important as far as community redevelopment and community support. My question is, has anyone looked at whether or not there's enough students, or will we attract enough students to support this investment? That's all I was asking.
And I think we have, the answer is yes. I think we have done some growth dynamics of what this will look like over the next couple of years. And I think we can at least address your question. If we need to go do a little more research, we're happy to do that. But yes, we have in fact done that, saying that in this demographic, by its service, we believe that we can fill this building in 5 years, is my guess, okay, to materially change the college-going rate of African-American students in South St. Petersburg.
Hang on one second, I'll get that answer for you.
He's getting an answer for you in terms of the
I
5
had,
years.
I had him pull a chart for me yesterday, and I was just trying to go through and find it. But I believe if you looked at a average 5% growth with the new facility and an average course load of about 7 credit hours, it would kind of hit capacity around 2015, 2016.
Let me give you, let's put it in a little bit different perspective. We just did the analysis as we backed up after last month. The average load at our current Midtown is 1 course. So we serve about 1,000 students a year there, and the average load is 1 course. That's because they can't get more courses there. That's exactly the point we're trying to make. Students take a course, but then to complete, they have to go to other campuses. We're trying to create a nexus where a student can start and finish at the same spot. Won't have all the programs. If you want nursing, you're gonna have to go to the health facility. If you want some other things. But for more students, the ability to manage the enterprise right there would be fundamentally important. So some of it will be growth within existing students, and that's not an inconsequential consideration. Secondly, though, in our discussions with the high school friends down there, having students see college in their neighborhood, in their future, in their community, especially with job-related programs, we think both it's a push and a pull to get students in there. So we have been pretty proactive to say, can we do this? Mr. North, I would tell you, I'm concerned that 45,000 square feet will fill up faster than we think. My concern is kind of, I wish there was a phase 2 spot next door where we could talk about that 5 years from now. There really isn't. So we're happy to go back and kind of pull and give you better reassurance.
Well, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you'd like to make sure that it's going to provide an appropriate return, although I know that's not always the right way to look at building a community college. So it would just be helpful for me if someone could help convert what your ideas are into metrics that I would personally understand. So then this is kind of how I would look at it. What's the cost? How many hours will it take in order to get it to a reasonable return or break-even point?
Okay.
That's the way I look at stuff.
Help us juggle between the art and the science.
Right.
Okay,
Dr. Long,
we're on both
saying it
sides of
has
that
to be
issue.
perfect. I just want to understand.
let me respond to that. Mr. North, I think you're wrong. I think there should always be a business case to doing something from the community college standpoint, because we need to show the rate of return and whether we can do this. I think over the years, I don't see this as a redevelopment project. So other people may do that. I don't. I see it as the growth that has happened within the community college, our college, has happened in Midtown. Now, either we're going to provide that service or walk away from it. In my business, it tells me when people want a service, you provide it and get the maximum amount of dollars that you can for it. Now, we're not in that business and getting the maximum amount of dollars, but we have to provide that service.
I am 100% in favor of that.
I am, let me finish. My thing is I hear you loud and clear. So let's get the metrics to show that over the last couple of years, what has happened.
Oh, yeah.
Number one, and number two, how this will pay for itself over time. I agree. I think you don't backstep and say we should not always do so. There are going to be some things that we do based upon community needs, and this is one of those things, and I think we can show that very easily. And there's other things that we do, where we're charitable in a sense, but we're not building buildings. When we're building buildings, we need to make sure that we have a plan and we can appropriately show every board member why this is what we need in this particular community. Now, we have we have buildings a lot of places, but they all seem to provide a service that is needed, and we fill them up. And so we need to show you the same thing here.
We can do that. We can.
All right, Mr. Nora? All right, so here it is here. Based on an average load of 6 hours, it's not in, I've got
Okay.
it right here.
All right,
And I'm happy to show it to you afterwards.
that's fine.
Based on 6 credit hours at an estimated 5% growth per year, we've got total course enrollments this year of 2,718. So we would go up to 2015, it would be 3,146, and in 2016, it would be 3,304, which would kind of put us right there at the average daily capacity for the building at about 85% and 6 hours per student.
And currently, you are unable to serve, out of the
Let me-
facilities you have today.
Let me skip forward
Okay.
a few slides. All right, currently, you've got a footprint of 10,000 square feet and about 6 classrooms. And as Dr. Law mentioned, those are really, in comparison to what we're proposing, about half classrooms, because the capacity is about 22 to 24 students. You've got 1 computer lab and you've got 1 science lab and approximately 152 stations. So now, currently, if you look at a average daily capacity, which would be students being able to take classes about 7 times a day with 6 hours and about 85% capacity, you're only able to do about 904 versus what's proposed is 3,201. And then we would hit 3,146 in 2015.
So when the bell rings at 8 o'clock in the morning, Mr. North, we can only serve 152 students now. That's the number of chairs available for students.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can see that.
Yeah,
That's
and we
a
think
problem.
that's inadequate, right?
So, when you increase the size of the building 4 times, though, you're only increasing your capacity 3 times. So, what's occurred here that's?
Some of that is the support service space. There's no library learning center down there. There's no ancillary services to assist students with their learning. There's the science labs, of course, are not at 40. They're probably at 28. There will be some counseling. There's no advising services. So we have to figure out how to have the experience. It doesn't have to be a huge counseling area, but it has to be a counseling area. It doesn't have.
But we currently have a spot that has 10,000 feet in it.
Yes, sir.
We're not going to tear that down.
That's the discussion later on the agenda that says we may want to acquire that. We're leasing that, and we think we ought to control that. But if you'll hang that discussion for the next one, we'll engage you on that as well. So now you see where we are. We're trying to say what is the nature of the service we want to provide. You've got to have something to make sure a student can be successful when they start there. We have to reach out, give something that can support a good number of growth with support services, make it all fit in 45,000 square feet. Atrium, probably not where we want to land on this one, okay? But we owed it to you to come back and say, we have done a great deal of foot-by-foot planning on some of this.
I think one of the major discussions that we should have is that, Dr. Law, is that on most of our campuses and even sites, we're able to complete some program.
That's correct.
And we are not able to do that in this facility. So we either take the program away or either expand it to the point where you can finish something. And you can't finish anything you can only, so for example, if you're trying to get your AA, right? You only can take 1 class a semester that you may need for that AA, or you have to go downtown or to Gibbs. Well, that defeats the purpose if you have a transportation issue. And so we need to either decide, I've already decided, I think that we have to have a program that can be completed on this particular site. And we cannot do that what we have currently. Now, we can expand that, and which we're trying to look at doing now, or which I think we should do. And I think if we're going to do that, we need to control our own destiny in terms of the growth around that particular campus. And that's the discussion that Dr. Law is talking about that's coming up later on the agenda. But I will tell you that it is a travesty, and when we tried to close this, I had people on my doorstep, and I think Mr. Brett could speak to, the city was up in arms, and most of the community came out and say, why are we closing this? Number one, it's the first opportunity that anybody's had to go to school in this community in a very long time. And number two, when we ramped up, the growth, the enrollment went through the roof. So, again, we can, I know you're a businessman, I'm a businessman, and we're going into Dade County now because we see the opportunity, because there's a bunch of people down there that aren't being served. Yet again, this is the same thing. There's a bunch of folks that have not been served. As well as, we look at all the other programs that downtown and other campuses provide that probably should be at a Midtown campus. And then we have a way to, as Dr. Law said, we have, some 10 or 12 high schools in St. Petersburg that, minority students are attending. This is another opportunity for them, for those folks who may be the first time in college, to be eased into college, and I think that's what you're going to see.
No, and I'm in favor of the mission.
Sure.
I just want to understand the metrics,
Metrics.
and so that's all.
Mr. Brett?
Dr. Gordon, on the one graph, page 11, you have the current capacity of 904.
Yes.
What's the actual?
It would be another 15% on top of that.
So you're beyond capacity now.
At the Midtown campus?
At the Midtown campus,
Yes.
yeah. We, like Mr. Chairman mentioned, one of the things that prevents the growth at Midtown is our inability to expand course offerings. I mean, with only 6 classrooms, it's hard to offer a lot beyond what we're offering now. So students do have to go a lot of other places to get the courses they need. They can't complete an AA at this campus, which is one of the major themes that we heard from the community during a couple of collaborative labs. We want to come to Midtown, and we want to be able to complete a degree right here. Right now, we have no capacity to do that.
A related question, the downtown campus. Do you know off the top of your head what the capacity is there?
Not off the top of my head. I can find it for you really quick, but I
Okay.
don't know it off the top of my head.
Do you know if you have,
In terms of seats, it's probably around, and I'm just guesstimating, it's about 697 seats. So that the capacity, then you have to do the calculations for that.
do you know if you have reached or exceeded capacity at downtown?
We have not. We still have to address programming at downtown. We don't have an identifiable program at downtown other than AA at this particular point. So we still need to have conversations about programming for downtown.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions?
I have some more.
Yeah,
But
go
wait,
ahead.
I've been kind of hot.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So if I understand your chart, you have 6 classrooms that have approximately 500 square feet each, and they seat 20 students. Is that what you currently have?
We've got, no, that 10,000 square feet is not just classrooms. There's one computer lab.
Mhm.
There's space for faculty. There's also a kind of a learning support / computer lab / some walls for some financial aid advising to happen. It's like a multi-purpose room with multi-functions as well. So the classrooms probably take up about maybe half, maybe not even half of that space, because you got to have for restrooms and common areas and that type of stuff.
Yeah, that wasn't Michael. I was actually trying to understand something about your chart. You have 6 classrooms in your current facility.
Right.
If I understood Dr. Law, they are half the size of what you're projecting.
In
to
terms
build.
of capacity, yes. In terms of how many students that classroom will hold, it only holds 22 to 24 students, whereas the 1,025 will hold 40 students.
Gotcha. So per class schedule, you hold, I mean, you can run, how many classes would you run through 6 classes a day?
Well, today we're going to have 13 classes. Yesterday we had 7.
Okay.
And that includes from the morning to the afternoon to the evening.
I hate to sound stupid, I'm just trying to understand this, and I apologize. So when you say you have 13 classes, does that mean you have 6 classes used twice during the day, or does that mean you have?
They could be used, you can use that one classroom 7 times a day.
Okay.
Which is,
So you
see
can
right
have
here.
42, yeah, okay.
That's the
right here,
metric.
that's that 7 times metric there. So that
Right.
one classroom can be used 7 times a day. And so what we did on the capacity, at 85%, that gives you a capacity of 904
At your current
for a
facility.
day, for 904 seats, or people in seats, or butts in seats.
Gotcha. And then,
On a daily basis.
And Mr. Brett had asked you earlier if you were at capacity now at your current facility. Was your answer yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we're beyond capacity at Midtown. Am I not correct in that?
Last year, at the end of that session, if you looked at an annual metric for Midtown, it was 1,028.
Got it.
Let me go to Mr. Fine. He's been waiting patiently. Mr.
No,
Brett.
I'm good. No,
You
I'm
good?
good.
All right, Mr. Brett. I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to let Mr. North know that, I'm not sure if you've been down to the Midtown campus.
I have not.
It's a great spot. It wasn't built as a college campus.
No, it wasn't.
It was built as offices. And that's why, that's part of the reason why it just is maxed out at this point. We tried to find space that would serve the community and serve the needs and mission of this institution, and that's the best that we could come up with. But it's wholly inadequate as a learning institution. That's part of the problem.
We pulled up Google Maps behind you. It's an office building kind of place, Mr. North. It's linear. You see it right there in the center. And this is part of, who's got the? Right there. Kevin, do I have? Where's my laser? This one?
Mr. North, what happened was in, what was that, Terry? Maybe 1999, 2000, late 90s, early 2000s. The Housing Authority was awarded a Hope 6 grant, and there were some requirements that needed to be met. One of which Governor Bush got involved in, and he wanted to see an achievement center put in the community. What that was going to look like or what it was going to be was, nobody knew that. It was just going to be an achievement center. The housing project at that particular time was the most densely and most compacted housing complex in the state of Florida, second to Opelika. Overtown in Miami. And so they built a new housing, what they call community, no longer a project. And they also built this as a part of that Hope 6. What came out of that was a deal with Mayor Baker and the Housing Authority in the city to put St. Petersburg College there. We did that. I was not on the board at that particular point, but the board did that. At that time, Dr. Cutler asked that they put a second floor on it because it would not meet the needs once he went there. And lo and behold, he ended up being right. That once we went there, at first it started out very slowly, but once people realized that it was there for the community to utilize, as well as you could actually take courses, and they counted towards getting a AA or a degree of some sort, people started to utilize it. So it was built as a part of a Hope 6 project. It was not built by the college at all. In fact, that's why we still lease it from the Housing Authority, because at one point we were going to get out of the lease. And lo and behold, when we did that, I had 15, 20 people a day coming, stopping by my house trying to jump the fence, or stopping me as I pull out saying, "Are you crazy?" And I can tell you that if you go back and talk to our former Mayor Rick Baker, he'll tell you that every time he went anywhere near Midtown, that individual stopped him and said, look, we need to keep this. Mr. Brett can probably give you some more history, but that's how we got this. This was not built for us. It was going to, actually, I think if I remember correctly, the Achievement Center was going to be for the kids in the neighborhood and the Boys and Girls Club, which is right across the street. At that time, we had just acquired, Bayfront Hospital had worked with the city on acquiring the Mercy Hospital site, in which we'll be going on. That's the site we'll be going on to. Here's the, down here is the actual Johnny Ruth Clark Health Center. That was the old Mercy Hospital. It had not been renovated. And so now it's renovated, and that whole corridor is starting to come back, along with the Sweet Bay and other things that are on that corridor now. So now you have some vibrancy, and people actually look to that corridor for services and other things, and that's why I think it's taken off in terms of the college being on that corridor.
So here's the, just for the next item, this is the site where the facility is being proposed. We're working with the Johnny Ruth Clark people. We'll realign the parking so that can be shared parking and some of that. You see we're just a long block from this facility, but it really was, it looks like almost like a professional office. There's a long corridor right down the middle, a couple classrooms on each side, administrative services, entryway. Mr. North, I think if we could find a little time for you to come down, this would make a lot more sense if you could see how modest this facility is and its utilization. So if we could do a little walkthrough, I think you would start seeing how this works. Just for future reference, we're going to be talking about this facility and this facility. We think there's in the next dialogue, acquiring those, don't let those get away from us, but we're moving ahead here.
Dr. Law, I still don't want to lose sight of it. Let's get him the metrics on that, though. I still want to do that. I think that is very important.
All right, let's jump back, if you would, to Kevin's presentation, and we'll just, Kevin, I've asked him to include, just to give you an idea of the sort of the quality of the space. This is not intended to be a design feature, but you see what the learning spaces could look like. These are from some of our latest classroom and lab additions. Nice, but certainly not extravagant by any stretch of the imagination. Here's what we'd like to do is take your questions again from today. I think we're closing in on a better description of the need and the metrics and how it works. And then in September, bring back revised drawings that represent your input today and our proposal as to how it all can fit in a revised building plan from last time. But I hope we're creating a different level of understanding for you as to the challenges we face and the responses that we're trying to craft.
In here, you just have some student comments, and these are just examples of some of the spaces that might be in the building. Student commons or gathering area. With Midtown being in an urban setting, most of the space that students will gather or kind of hang out in between classes will have to be inside. There's not a courtyard in this particular design. Then there'll be a student services component to it. Students will need to have a walk-up and be able to get service for academics, registration, financial aid, those types of things. And of course, there'll be some office space for faculty and administrative services. And this slide you've seen. And so some of the next steps are to really look at the feasibility of programs and space allocation. We've got some preliminary feedback through a student survey of the types of programming that they want. We also need to coordinate the learning resources and out-of-class support spaces based on what we think the enrollment's going to grow to. Also allocate space based on current staffing plan that we have for Midtown. And ensure that the community is considered in the design and use of the building. We've heard repeatedly from the community through our collaborative efforts that they want this to be a community college in the look and feel and be able to come in and use some of the space from the community. And then finally, we're going to revisit and revise the plans. Additional questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any comments, Dr. Law?
No, we're going to stay with it, and we can answer your questions and,
Sure.
and assure people that we're heading the right thing. But we value your input. That input last month was a little bit of a wake-up call for us. We have not done a good job with you.
I understand where Mr. North is on the metrics. I agree. We have to show you a business case of why we're doing
We
it.
can do
That makes sense. But number two, if we're gonna do it, we need to maximize the capacity for our classroom space. And I think that was echoed by a couple of the board members, but we just need to make sure that when we're building this, I don't see, like I said, I don't see it as a redevelopment project. If we're gonna do it, it needs to be butts and seats in the classrooms, getting them in, moving them through. But we also have to have those ancillary services that go along with the community college, and we don't have that. Simple things like having an ATM on campus. We didn't have that in this Midtown site. I mean, that was one of the things that I heard constantly, a place for people to congregate outside or to study. They don't have that. You know, if we're gonna provide a service, we gotta do it better than this, and it's not our fault that we're in the situation. We've outgrown the facility, so those simple things you have to have. I mean, we have that at every site, every campus, you know, places for people to study, places for people to buy books. I mean, you can't buy books on this campus. Those, I mean, if we're gonna provide the service, then we have to do the, you know, quality service. For lack of a better way of explaining it, I don't, you know, have an AMSCOT, you know, one place that you can't do the same things at another one. We don't do that. I mean, you're gonna provide the same services across the board, and we're not doing that here. So either we get out of the business, or we step up and do what we're supposed to do and make it, you know, look like everywhere else. But I agree, we need to have the metrics and the business case so you can see that. Thank you, Dr.
All right,
Gordon.
thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, we're on to the next thing. Dr. Laws, back to you on the fall enrollment and our management
Yeah,
discussion.
well, we'll go from one hard discussion to another. Let's bring up, I see people moving all around here. Yesterday, classes opened. Enrollment was off by just about 5%, a little over 5%. We want to give you a description of the enrollment, and then we want to give you a description of the immediate responses that we're having to manage that downside.
Good morning, members of the board, Dr. Law. We just want to give you a brief update. As Dr. Law just mentioned, classes began yesterday, and as customary, we want to apprise you of where we stand. We're going to look at enrollment a couple different ways. Head count, the number of students enrolled yesterday, as well as what we call student semester hours, which is the sum of all of the credit hours that our students are enrolled in. You saw a similar slide at the July meeting. I think you were briefed. And I think at that time we were about flat with our head count, and our SSH was trending down about 3%. And this is where we landed yesterday. As of opening day, head count is down 3%, and our student semester hour is down 5% to opening day last year. We put a lot of effort in the last few months, the whole college did, in making sure that number wasn't worse than it is. From the deans to the provost and their staffs calling students, I've never seen so much effort put forth in trying to curb that decline as I've seen this in the last few months. What this tells us is that students are taking fewer credit hours. We have fewer students, but we have a sharper decline in the student semester hours. So the average student load is declining. This is a slice that looks at student semester hours by our lower division course enrollments and our upper division course enrollments. And you can see that lower division was down 5.7% and upper division was down 2.2%. This also tells us something as far as the percent of total enrollment that the upper division represents. That's about 11% of our total enrollment, 11.5%. And that's really about, for the last 3 years, where it's been hovering, 10, 11% of our total enrollment. And this is the first time that we're actually showing a decrease in our upper division course loads. Okay, this slice looks at headcount data based on continuing students, new students, and readmit students. First, the definitions. The continuing student is a student who is enrolled this week,
who has been enrolled in the last year. A new student is brand new to the college, could be a first-time in college student or a transfer student. And a readmitted student is a student, a former SPC student who has not been enrolled in the last 1 year. And you can see the percent decreases there. We had a much smaller decline in our continuing students. In some aspects, that's positive, and it shows, I think it points towards persistence for our current students. And you see the 7.6% decline in new students and the nearly 6% decline in readmits, indicating that it's a little tougher to attract new students this year as well as bring back former students. This is a trend line, 8-week trend line for the continuing students. You can see where we landed last year, opening day. We had 23,945 students versus yesterday 23,610. A modest decline of 335 students, or 1.4%. If you look at the first 6 weeks of that trend line, it's very tight, very closely aligned. We had an earlier tuition payment due date this year, which is why you see the dip here, that blue line here. Occurred earlier this year, around August 6th, as opposed to last year. It was just a week before classes. And then you see the steady recovery since that tuition due date. The next slide is also trend lines show the new students, the top two lines, and the readmitted students. Again, first 6 weeks very tightly aligned. Then you see the adjustment for the tuition payment due date, and then the recovery. The decrease in new students is roughly 525 students, and the decrease in the readmitted students is a modest 145 students. Also, I wanted to point out that just in the last 2 weeks, if you look at the 5306 and the 6942, and this year, 2 weeks before classes began, we had 4,800 new students on the books compared to where we landed, 6,417 students. That's an increase of about 1,550 students that we are getting through the pipeline in the last 2 weeks. These are students that applied, they took the CPT test, they got some academic advising, they went to orientation, and they got registered, all in the last 2 weeks. It's a lot of students to get through that pipeline, and new students tend to be procrastinators, and that's what we've seen here. You can see that trend line in the last 8 weeks, and we took a lot of efforts to get students on the phone, to get them in and get them tested and get them in the seats. I'm going to turn it over to Jesse now to conclude this presentation.
Good morning. Looking at a further breakdown of our students, this is going to give us information on their full-time, part-time status. So full-time is defined as those students taking 12 or more credit hours during the term. And the one thing that kind of stands out to us on this particular slide is the fact that we actually increased in our part-time enrollment, and the majority, all of the decrease was in our full-time enrollment. So part-time enrollment is up 1%. Full-time is actually down 11%, and that goes along with Dr. Nard's comments about students are taking a smaller load. They're taking fewer number of classes. This is also indicative on this trend line. We can look at the various bar charts across time, and this is something we had brought to you last fall, was a trend that we were starting to notice, and that's a larger increase in the percentage of students that are part-time status here at the college. And with this fall, the trend's continuing. So we were at 67% in fall 2011. This fall, we're at 69%, and it's continuing as an upward trend. Financial aid awards. This is looking at a stacked bar chart of information concerning students without aid versus students with aid. We look at the proportions, and they're actually very similar to what they were fall a year ago. 1% down in terms of those with aid, 55% compared to 56% a year ago. And just some quick noteworthy observations to kind of summarize the presentation. Students are obviously taking fewer credit hours, and that's something as an institution we have to think about and manage as we move forward. There was a 3% proportional increase in part-time students. We have a decline of full-time students, about 11.1%. And as Dr. Renard mentioned, we discussed the decrease in upper division enrollment for the first time since the history of our upper division program. For new students, we had a decline of about 7.6%, and we have a slightly lower proportion of students receiving financial aid. Again, it's very close, 55 to 56% in comparison to last year. Any questions we can answer?
Do you have enrollment status figures by campus? Or does that even make sense? I mean, do they go from campus to campus?
Yes, there's very rarely where students stay on just one campus because of various programs, enrollments, and times with their schedule, where they work versus where they live. There's a lot of cross-campus enrollment we have at the institution. Yeah, I mean, we could give you a number and show you a number. I don't know how meaningful it'll be given the cross-campus enrollment.
It may not be meaningful. It might be meaningful to look at whether or not their class loads campus by campus have changed over the year. That way you can determine.
Your questions are really good. We always have a footnote as to why we can't give you exactly the answer. We do this thing. If the home campus of the instructor who offers a distance learning course becomes how a student splits their bets. So if you take 9 hours at Clearwater and you sign up for a distance learning course, an online course, and that instructor is at St. Pete, you show as having then 9 hours at Clearwater and 3 hours at St. Pete. And it confounds a little bit of what, when we looked, we found 102 variations of how students' loads are configured because of which faculty members where they are. So it's not as intuitive as you and I recall from the old days. If you're at Clearwater, you're a Clearwater student. Here's my assessment. Behind the numbers, there is a lot of machinations going on with financial aid. Even though we're holding steady, I would bet, Mike, I would bet we have had 1,000 students whose financial aid we didn't meet standards of progress since last December, last January, everything else. So holding steady is we've done a good job, but there's a lot fewer students who used to get financial aid. The feds have really cracked down on that, and we have then, that's one. Secondly, and it's mostly anecdotal, but we have made hundreds and hundreds of phone calls, especially in the baccalaureate programs and others. People are just running out of money. They simply don't have the money to take that extra course or to take a course if they've been out of work too long. It's just a downsizing. They're trying to keep their commitment alive, but they can't keep it alive at the level they had in the past. That's my own belief of what's taking place. I think we can, with some of our planning tools, we can start checking to see if that's really what the patterns look like and those sorts of things. But it's a work. I've not seen this in the past in this particular form.
Will we have opportunities to see other colleges or benchmark with other Florida colleges?
We will, and I'll as soon as those numbers come in, I'll share those. The presidents don't always tell the truth, and before the semester starts, they tend to lie. If you're not asking about their salary, just ask them about the enrollment, and you get stories that may or may not be true. So as soon as the semester starts, you have to fess up. So we'll get you good numbers, okay? It is across the board, though. You will see that.
Were you saying earlier that you felt like this was a trend that may continue?
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous that this is, that we know the financial aid squeeze is going to continue. And when you read, and we'll keep you informed, we've done a couple of good workshops with you on financial aid, but it's a rapidly moving field. They continue to squeeze this thing down for reasons that we might salute. That is, students have to make progress. You can't wander around. There's a limit to how much financial aid they're going to give you. But community college students are sort of the first ones being squeezed hardest on that. So that's one that won't change. There's no way out of that. That's going to continue. And then secondly, I happen to think we're a long way back from people having. If you sign up for a course, you need $500-600 discretionary income to take a course. That's a lot of discretionary income.
Do you think it's still appropriate to consider investing in the new campus if you see enrollments continue to de-escalate? Did I say that right?
Yeah, I think some of it is who they are. You know, again, I get a lot of data. I think we're talking around some of the points here. The long-term commitment of this institution, particularly in the minority community, needs to maintain itself on the front burner for us. We just looked at the 100 top degree-producing colleges in America, and we show up at about 15th in that list, and that's something to be proud of. We show up about 50-something in African-American degrees produced, okay? The fall-off is it's not, we only awarded 318 degrees to African-American students last year. And I don't think in Pinellas County that's a sufficient response to get the kind of support we want throughout our community. So, Mr. North, I'm back and forth between nurturing, encouraging, maintaining, getting students to the finish line, and handling some of the change. One last piece, and then I'll go. We will see a shift, and we have started to make the shift. Some of this will go to certificate programs. The very things that we saw at the Center for Collaborative Technologies, where a student comes and gets a recognized national certificate that gets them a job, they may not show up in these because we've never counted non-credit students. Those students get clock hour programs. They take 800 hours of training. And in the past, we've not been able, we didn't count them as part of this. So there's a whole range of shifts going on here that we're on top of it, but boy, it is unfolding in front of our eyes.
So all of our certificate programs would not be?
Some are. Some of where we could do credit-based certificates,
Okay.
we're in great shape. So you see us with certificates in the health services, for instance. But there's a whole range of certificates that don't have to be credit hour based.
I'd be interested in seeing the enrollment in those programs
And that's where
also.
we're pushing very hard. That's where a lot of the jobs are. The manufacturing jobs, we can get you 2 nationally recognized certificates in 6 months that get you job eligible. And that's part of what we're trying to do. In the past, those students, I don't know, that you had to be in a credit program to get to the college. And we're making that shift.
One last question.
Yeah.
Do other colleges have recruiters, people that actually go out and dreamweave and
Right.
solicit student enrollments?
We do, they do, and we do, okay? And we have, in fact, the team does pretty good. They're the ones making the calls when it's tight. They do all the college nights at the campuses and everything else. Because of some turnover, we have that under a little more scrutiny to be sure we're doing all of the kinds of things that make sense, the social media, and is our marketing old style marketing or new style marketing, or who we marketing to, and that kind of thing. And I don't know how big that staff is, 3, 4, 5 people, is that what we've got?
5 or 6 recruiters.
Yeah, so we do those as well. What I want to do, though, is, and as I'm watching this, I'm going to go in and look at some of that up and down by age. I want to be sure that being off by 7.6% in new students is not a very good statistic. I don't know how many of those are 18 years old, though. If we're not getting the high school students coming to us, that's a real problem. If it is mid-career adults who didn't reinvigorate a new program because of financial need or whatnot, then that's a different problem that we would have to address. So that we'll look a little further in there. We'll give you the morning run here, okay? Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we didn't wake up Monday morning and find out we were going to be 5% below. We've been managing the management side of this pretty hard. And is your presentation teed up next? Is that where we're headed on this?
I don't know if Mr. Brett had a question.
I did.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's for Dr. Renard.
Okay, bring it back.
You mentioned that there was a pretty strong effort to try to make a dent in this number.
Yes,
Can you elaborate at all?
certainly. Through social media, through direct mail. I think in July, we sent out 23,000 direct mail pieces that were not planned to go out to students, continuing students, students that were here maybe in the fall or spring that had not yet registered, new students, high school students. As applicants applied, something new we did this summer is we gave Dr. Cooper and the deans the list of students who applied the week before to their programs. And they and their teams called those students to welcome them to the college. I mean, there's always been a plethora of mail, email to new students, but we were lacking that personal touch. So the deans were reaching out to them. The provosts were given lists of high school students from their feeder high schools that had applied, but they hadn't taken the CPT. Just enjoying the summer, and we're concerned about enrollment and getting them through the pipeline. And I think the provost, the resounding response was, thanks for the call and for the reminder. And I think we definitely saw an uptick in students coming in to take the placement test. So just things like that.
Dr. Law had mentioned hundreds of phone calls being made. Was there any surveying being done where you actually have results on some feedback?
No, not to my knowledge. I don't think that the college has surveyed. Dr. Williams and I talked about that yesterday as far as surveying students that maybe are not here, that were here in the fall or spring or in good standing, to find out why they're not here, and maybe even surveying our own students that are here to see why you may not be taking as many credit hours as you once did.
So much of this is speculation, as you're talking about the financial aid and so forth, that it might be nice to actually talk to some of these students and see what the real reasons are. But
we can do that. Thank you.
What was your response rate on your 23,000 mail-out?
Mr. North, we don't have that information. With marketing, we're starting to put the QR codes on all those direct mail pieces. The challenge that we have is we don't have a central funnel point for those students. They may respond by go ahead and enrolling, or they may respond by calling the call center to inquire about applying to the college. So because there's not one central call to action, so to speak, we're not capturing those response rates.
Do we know what the effect the private schools are affecting this rate by any chance? We don't know that either. I'm interested to probably know that. I mean, because a lot of feedback that I get is that our programs take too long, we're too traditional, and they can get through. And they're selling them on a quick education, and then 3 years down the road they'd have nothing, and financial aid is expended, and all these other things. So I'd like to see what the private colleges, or whatever you want to call them, how they affect that number. I bet you their hours are probably more flexible for working.
The for-profits.
Yeah, the for-profits, the private or for-profit schools. I bet you their hours are more flexible than ours. I think that's probably where they have a slight competitive edge.
What would you mean? Oh, I don't mean, they're open later?
Yeah, I mean, they're open later. They're more inviting. They bring these students in. They tell them, give them the world, and say they're going to give them the world, and they actually better. Yeah, well, not necessarily recruiting, but you remember, they're putting on TV commercials that say, if you come now, we'll get you in now. What we say is, when you come, because we have standards, we can't just bring people in without testing them and make sure they get to the right point. They're bringing them in, and they don't have the same standards that we have. And SACS accreditation and other things that we have to meet, those types of standards, they're not having to meet all those. They may have an accreditation arm, but it's probably not SACS. Would you agree, Dr. Law?
That's correct.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see how those for-profit institutions are affecting this. And I would imagine some of that is probably going on a little bit.
Well, and I try to take a lesson from competition. We don't have to like everything they do, but they obviously have offerings that attract students. We ought to have offerings, we ought to compete at the offerings level and then do it better than those folks. I mean, that's the case. And if it's certificates and short courses and get people into jobs quicker than 2 years, then I think that's a lesson for us to take under, that's where I want to get to.
But, I mean, I don't say that to criticize us. I'm just saying, for example, a young lady I ran into says she's in a nursing program at some private college. I would not, I put our nursing program up against any private college in the state of Florida. But I don't think we should relax or reduce our standards to compete with them. Maybe we can recruit better, like you're saying.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. President. What I'd like to share with you this morning is how we on the academic side of the house have been tracking the enrollment and produced a schedule that's conducive to those enrollment trends. So we've been doing a number of things. First of all, by offering a conservative schedule, we offered fewer sections than what we had last fall. We've continued to monitor the patterns by using some Excel spreadsheets that Doug Duncan and his team have produced for us, which allows our deans and provosts to compare courses and look at what happened last year with what's happening this year. And that data can be manipulated by campus, by academic org, by instructional modality, and it's very helpful. We also created a survey for students who come in to register and can't find the class that they want. That's only been in existence for about 2 weeks, I think, but it is proving to be helpful. That data is then provided to the deans, who can look at their course schedules, see if there is something that they can do for those students, contact them and share that information with them. Or if they get enough requests for the same course, then they'll know that it's time to release a course that may not be available, or add a course to the schedule at that time. And we have also, we're making adjustments as we go. Some of the courses are held in what we call a tentative status. They're not released immediately until we know that sections of that particular course on a campus are all full, and then we know that it's time to release those tentative sections. So this gives you some data which helps to demonstrate. We have not reduced the courses that we are offering, so smaller programs are still able to offer their courses, and students are still able to graduate and progress through their programs. We have, as you can see, reduced the number of sections, however, that we're offering. We've decreased that by 301, which is about a 7% reduction. If we look at the percentage of seats taken based on our capacity, number of seats offered, we are doing a very good job of making sure that our sections have that are almost over 90% full, excuse me. And then we have a metric which we refer to as the equated credit hours, and this is how we convert the class time, or the credit hours that a class is worth to a student, to how we then manage faculty loads or pay for a supplemental or adjunct course. Essentially, the ECH, or equated credit hour, is equivalent to a standard credit hour, or 15 contact hours, if we want to think about it in contact time.
Could you say that again? I didn't
Sure. The equated credit hours is, in most instances, equivalent to the credit hours that the course is worth. So a 3-credit course usually requires 45 contact hours. So a faculty member is paid 3 equated credit hours for that. And so one equated credit hour is equivalent to 15 contact hours. When we look at that compared to what we had in actual equated credit hours in last fall's schedule compared to this fall, you can see that we have reduced the number of equated credit hours by 1,242, which is equivalent to just shy of $1 million when we.
Mr. North, that is the, and I know when you describe your business, that's sort of the granular, that's the amount of faculty effort that we used to teach that much, okay? And we reduced that by 9% this year.
Then if we use what we call a performance metric and look at, based on the total number of actual equated credit hours divided by our actual enrollment, then we are providing for 7.7 students per equated credit hour. So that helps us to look at, based on what a student is paying for tuition, we're bringing in just the tuition part, about $814 for that equated credit hour. So we're covering our costs.
If we go back to the enrollment downturn, though, back of the envelope, we were 16,000 student semester hours below last year to this year. We get about $80 is the operating budget impact for each credit hour. The rest are some fees or whatnot. But in the operating budget, it's about $80. So we're $1.2 million on day one shortfall in revenue. And we will start to roll up our sleeves, and by this time next month, we'll have a plan to you as to how we will manage that downturn even presently and going forward. One of the things I've learned in a long time as president, there's no such thing as a short-term budget problem. Deal with the issue as you have it right now, make the adjustments, don't kick the can down the road. So we will come back to you with a plan for how we will manage if indeed the 5% enrollment is going to be what's going to happen over the year. We're going to work to try to change that, but the facts on the ground are that we're down 5% and we need to adjust budgets that reflect that reality.
One of the things that struck me when you were explaining why you think there's such a reduction was the lack of financial aid or the restrictions on financial aid. Do you think there's a false positive that were built into the numbers because of a lack of controls on financial aid, and so that we're going to come back to this new norm, or do you actually think we need to look at other sources of funding for people to continue their education?
Let's take it in two bites. And again, I want to compliment our guys. You're seeing some schools with very big bills owed back to the federal government for not having standards in place for managing the financial aid. I mean, I have colleagues who owe $3 million, and they're going to get another audit that tells them they owe another $3 million. So I only want to tell you, we started last December with a rigorous implementation of the federal guidelines. No soft soap on this. If these are the guidelines, let's do them. And we took, you saw our enrollment started to go south in January. We were up last fall, down last spring. And I believe that is from a strengthening, but a restricting of financial aid. Students cannot continue to take it. Many are on very restricted plans as to how many courses they can take and how much financial aid they will get. It limits them to keep taking courses after the fact. So all of those are restrictions in the overall view. You know, you go first and I'll take the other side. It's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think having students wander around and build up debt and not complete is a very bad thing. I think that's catastrophic. I'd rather deal with a 5% enrollment decline for students who are supported and nurtured and have a chance of success than to open the doors and not support students. So. But it's a financial aid matter. I'm absolutely convinced. The fall enrollment, the summer enrollment, as you remember, was off by about 11%. And I think if let me be sure that I repeat what happened. A year ago, the Fed said, we'll count summer as its own year. You can get as much financial aid as you want. So you didn't have to worry about what was left in your annual allocation of financial aid. Boom, we'll give you all you want. Students responded in kind. They took a lot more courses. This year, the Fed said, I'm sorry, financial aid for the summer is what remains in your annual account. Well, guess what? Students took a lot fewer courses, 11% fewer in how it works. If somebody else, you know, and I'm kind of happy for students if they didn't borrow 11% more money, but the reality is the feds keep changing the rules on us, and it's a little difficult to manage toward that end. If I sound like I'm whining, I am. We're doing a good job with the facts that are in front of us. The facts are changing every day. The society we're dealing with is changing every day. The economics across, we have a big internal dialogue.
is the economy, if it's getting better, does that mean students stop coming to us? Well, yeah, it's getting better, but I think people who lost their job 2 years ago don't have the luxury of continuing to write checks to go back to school. They have run out of money. And I think that's part of underlying us. So we've done a lot of thinking about it. We're trying to manage it as we see it, whatever guidance you can give us. If something from your business or private background, I mean, anyone who's got their pulse on the economy could give us some good guidance as to what you think is going to happen.
Any more questions?
So do you think we're heading towards a new norm, which is going to be a reduced? Okay.
Yeah, I think we are. And then back to your original question, though, the growth in the African American community won't be less. There's a pent-up demand that can be met there. I think we're going to see some shifting.
I think it's an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I think so.
Are there other areas like that?
I think there are. My own sense is, I think this business of giving people certificates, things that they can add that move them forward in their careers, I think it's an enormous area of growth. Major shift. Now we added a new a new position in financial aid to work on the non-credit financial aid, and I think we had an item of $25,000 for some specific software so that we could start offering financial aid to students in non-credit programs. It's legal, it's supportable. We've just never done it, and I think it's a huge area of growth. So those are the things we're working on, Mr. North.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Cooper. Achieving the dream.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
We wanted to come and provide an update on Achieve the Dream. I know we've talked about it a little bit in this setting. We talked about us receiving the grant that enabled us to participate in Achieve the Dream. We talked about our kickoff conference where we met with a group in Portland. But we wanted to kind of step back and give you some information on Achieve the Dream, talk about a little bit what's gone on in the last few months. Basically, Achieve the Dream, there's their description there. What is Achieve the Dream? It's a national nonprofit dedicated to helping community college students, particularly low-income students and students in color, stay in school and earn a college certificate or degree. Ultimately, what we've been talking about in this room is we want students to finish what they start. And this is a national organization made up of a number of schools we'll talk about in just a minute, who's very focused on that outcome. This is basically how they are going to go about achieving their mission. They're going to use guiding evidence-based institutional improvement, influencing public policy, generating knowledge around student success, and at the very end, engaging the public in the discussion and bringing the necessary resources and supports in to make this a reality. Some numbers about the program. Nearly 200 colleges, including ours, are now participating. 15 different state policy teams are part of their organization. They have more than 20 investors, Gates Foundation, Lumina, more than 100 coaches and advisors that work through Achieving the Dream. In fact, we have 2 of those coaches. We have a leadership coach who visited recently and a data coach that's going to help us along our journey with Achieving the Dream. And they're working throughout 32 states and the District of Columbia. Their focus helped 3.75 million community college students have a better chance of realizing their dreams. This is essentially the principles and how they're going to go about it. They're very focused on institutions having committed leadership, which I believe that we do in combination with the board and our president, to focus on student success. They're very evidence-focused. A culture of evidence is what they're looking for. They've talked to us numerous times. It's not about a discussion about anecdotal information. It's immediately that response, show me the numbers, show me the data, and let me use that to drive my decision making. It's about broad engagement, and we'll talk in just a minute how we've infused this throughout the institution. And it's about systematic institutional improvement, not this initiative or that initiative, but how we build these initiatives together to ultimately focus on student success. And the last principle is new. It's equity, and they really just added this as a principle at this last kickoff conference that we attended. And I thought Dr. McKinney actually had a good analogy that really helped me understand, because there was a lot of discussion of what's the difference between equality and equity. And the example that he gave, the analogy he gave, was if we take a sports team like a basketball team, and we throw a whole bunch of shoes there in the center court and say, there's the shoes you're going to play basketball with this season, and they're all size 12, that's equality. You know, equity is making sure you have the right size shoe for the right player, so ultimately everybody can function best in that environment. So to me, personally, what this means is meeting students where they are. It's not making sure we have every single thing for students, but actually meeting students where they are so we can help them be successful. This is the process they'd like institutions to go through. We've actually already continued on this, started on this journey a lot with the things such as the student lifetime retention policy and the college experience. But they want each institution to identify and prioritize its problems, develop strategies to address priority problems. How are we going to correct it? Implement, evaluate, and improve these strategies. So ultimately the importance of implementation and evaluation to make sure you're on the right course and that you're setting up process measures as we move along. And then ultimately institutionalizing those policies and practices so they become every part of what we do. They're not these separate initiatives. They're going to focus this on essentially a report card of 5 various measures, and we've been beginning to collect data to come up with baseline information on this, and they're all related to student success. Things like completion of developmental courses. You know we historically have had challenging rates when it comes to student success in developmental courses. We know that there's an infringement to students as they move through that pipeline, and we've started to do things like our competency-based accelerated developmental courses to move through that, but we're going to start to monitor that data. Completion of gateway courses, things like intermediate algebra, are some of our computer literacy courses that students historically, we have high enrollment and we have low success rates, and how we improve to get students through that pipeline. Completion of all courses with C or better. We begin to put BI dashboards together that focus on what we call as the success rate. What are the percentage of students getting A, Bs, and Cs within their coursework? And we've shared that through the institution with deans and provosts and set individual targets. Our persistence, our progression through the program, the fall to spring retention rate, the fall to fall retention rate, we're going to begin to monitor those. And those are numbers we can bring back to the board to share with as we make progress. And then ultimately our graduation rate, you know, to get students to finish what they start, how are we doing in terms of graduation rates with our various cohorts? We talked about broad engagement, and one way that we've tried to accomplish that just recently is incorporating achieving the dream within our organizational structure. So our Strategic Issues Council is going to serve as our core team. You know, all the policy discussions related to Achieve the Dream are going to flow through the Strategic Issues Council. We've developed 2 sub-teams that include representatives from all over the institution. They include faculty, deans, provost. One is focusing on implementing the new policies and the new strategic initiatives. That'll be the action team. And then we're going to have a data team that's focused on pulling this data, working with the data, and presenting to the data and communicating it with the institution. And that's going to be our data team. And then underneath their strategic issue councils, we have our core teams of Academic Affairs Committee, Student Support Committee, and System Support Committee. And Achieve the Dream will be the first agenda item on every one of these committee meetings as we move forward. And each agenda item will include data so we can start having discussions about data and how to improve an institution. One of the complexities of this, and I'm sure as a board you hear, you know, the graduation status, you hear the learning plan, you hear the life plan, and after a while they seem to be all these kind of disconnected initiatives. The reality is they're all embedded together, and the provosts and deans have worked very hard to implement this as one focused initiative, ultimately changing our policy. But the top umbrella of that will be Achieve the Dream, because they're going to come in and they're going to help us build evaluation resources around each of these initiatives to make sure we're tracking them, that we accomplish what we want to accomplish, but also that we're tweaking those initiatives as we go along in terms of process measures. So they're going to help provide us with those resources and really connect us to these other 199 colleges that are on the same mission and focus we are, and assist us in resources as we move forward. So here's some of the things that have happened lately. We had our big kickoff at the fall faculty meeting last week, and a big focus of that was our involvement with Achieve the Dream and sharing that message with faculty and administrators that were in attendance. We've developed a new website. If you simply go to our college website and type in /dream, it'll take you to that information. We have all general information on what Achieve the Dream is. We have some data metrics out there right now. We're going to keep updating that site with reports and progress as we move along. We had a visit from our leadership and data coaches the day of fall faculty and the day after. They came on site. They were able to attend the fall faculty meeting. We had various visits with the provost, visits with Dr. Law and our FGO leadership to have some discussions about what we want to accomplish. And the next piece of it is the campus-based discussions that we're going to move through on campus visits as well as our all-college day. But one big focus from them is to take the data that you're able to put together and then have those, what they refer to as courageous conversations or dialogues about how do we improve together. What are the ideas? What information stems from the data? And as I mentioned before, to me, the Achieving the Dream is really the overarching umbrella of everything that we're doing. It's not a separate initiative, and by fact, these aren't a separate initiatives. They're all core to ultimately getting students to finish what they start. So we had some, Dr. Oliver shared with us a little bit about the career advising. Dr. Carney shared with us about the learning plan, and you've heard information about the new student orientation, early alert system, our big focus, of course, institutionally on out-of-the-classroom support, and we met with you last time to share with you information on the student life plan. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to get students to finish what they start. Any questions I can answer?
Any questions, board members?
I think it's good. Yeah. Are we investing any money into these data coaches, or is this, I mean, are we having to pay them something?
The Kresge Foundation gave us a $125,000 grant, and we put in a little less than that over a 3-year period. Okay, so we've got $35,000 a year is our commitment to Achieving the Dream over the next 3 years.
Any more questions?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. It's $35,000 a year for 3 years coming up? And
This
we
year
gotta-
being year one,
Okay.
next year being year two, so is a total of $105,000
Gotcha.
over 3
Gotcha.
years. And for that, we get access to the research capacities, the 199 other schools, the whole infrastructure, and they bring some real focus on pulling these things together. I mean, we've got a lot of good ideas, but they bring a discipline to it.
Do they have any information on other colleges
Oh,
and their
yeah,
enrollment
yeah,
rates?
Yeah, we can get a lot of information from them.
That'd be valuable.
As part of being a member college in this process, we'll be sending data extracts about our students and our programs to Achieve the Dream, and they'll compile that into a massive data warehouse that'll be accessible both through Achieve the Dream membership schools as well as a public site that the American Association of Community Colleges is going to host. So we'll be able to get great benchline information on where we're at. They're also going to help us coming up with those process measures. I know when Dr. Carney was talking earlier, you were asking about how we're going to measure specific things and what metrics we're going to use. They're going to help us build essentially those report cards or scorecards, and we'll have that information, those evaluation models, systematic black box kind of evaluation approach just to pull that data and monitor as we go along.
You ready? Okay.
I think we've done that.
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
thank you.
just
Yeah.
in interest of time, just to be mindful, there's only one, you've been very patient dealing with, I think this is board work. I
No, it is.
appreciate your energies. We have one other discussion. The rest is pretty pro forma. We're happy to answer any questions, but I just want you to know if you invest a little more time in the item regarding acquisition of additional properties, and we
Yep.
may have already had some of that discussion here today, but
I
you're
think
close
that's
to the
important.
end.
You
That's
want to
all I
go,
wanted
do you want to go down to that and then come back up and just take up the other issues?
I want, if somebody will make a motion, again, if there are questions on the grants and other things, there's nothing of any
That would be
question of
C,
significance
item
there.
C, 1 and 2, D.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I think B, C, and D are all pro forma.
I think B is just information, right?
Right.
So we only need C and D.
And we have a
You making a
motion.
motion?
I'll make the motion.
That we take C, item C, 1 and 2, D, 1, A through G. Second?
Second.
We have a motions and properly moving second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposing. Motion passes. Are there any questions on those, though, before we move on? I would prefer if you have questions on any of these items that we take those up as well. I don't want to push us to move past them if board members have questions on any of these items.
No.
Okay, then we're down to capital outlay, item E. And starting off, we have a discussion about the, I'll let Dr. Law give a little background about what we're discussing. And the reason this is on the agenda is he and I had a discussion. I feel like we need to have the board members discuss whether or not this is something, and especially based upon our earlier discussion, something we should be giving the Dr. Law the authority to go ahead and start doing some negotiations. So
We showed you the map. In fact, pull the map back up if you would. But the facility that we're currently in has been retrofitted for some of our use. It has some benefit. It's owned by the Housing Authority, and they have approached us and said, "Are you interested in purchasing this facility? Can you use it downstream?" The answer is maybe. I think we have to finish the planning of the new facility. But what I don't want to do is, we're going to get landlocked pretty quickly. If there is a good deal to be made to retain access to again, a 10,000 additional square feet, literally
Plus, yeah.
a 3-wood shot away from us, we ought to find out what are they talking about as far as prices, appraisals, those kinds of things. In that discussion, they also own an ancillary property across the street. They said they would be willing to do that. It currently serves as a gymnasium. I suspect we would plow it under. We're starting to figure out that as we build this campus, we're going to need some additional parking places, we're going to need some additional sites and everything else. I just don't want to get any discussion started if it's not going to get at least a hearing at the board level here. I mean, if we can't structure a proposal to acquire some additional space close by to where we're putting a major facility, you know, we don't want to mislead those folks, and we certainly don't want to mislead this board.
Yeah.
But I can't show up with a proposal for you that you've never heard of.
The discussion really centers around whether or not, you know, when we move forward with the Midtown campus, what do we want it to look like? Do we want to control some of the stuff on some of the properties on the corridor to make sure that our experience isn't affected? And one of the things the gymnasium is probably going to be right outside our front door across the street. And we've, you know, in the past, the housing authority has no use. The gym is obsolete. The HUD administrator, who Dr. Law and I know from this region, a former legislator, is now an appointee for HUD in Atlanta, has already said, you know, if they're going to give it to the college or they're going to sell it to the college, we're not looking to make any money off of this. We're trying to, you know, we will release them of that property. The issue begins to be, you know, we've had issues where they've rented the gym out and starting our front door, and then you have 50 cops where there's a party right outside the front door. Across the street from us, though, you know, when you look at it realistically, if the growth looks like what we think it may look like, it provides an opportunity to maybe take the bookstore and some other stuff, maybe, to put across the street. The property is more valuable than the gym to us. I just don't see us having a use for that. The Housing Authority Board has already given Mr. Arians the authority to move forward with selling it. I know that he has had some discussions with us, but has not gone into much detail. I know that we were looking at how much money we had put into the 10,000 square foot facility there. But I think the gym provides another opportunity for us to look at parking, not be landlocked long term. If and when we decide to move forward with the facility down there, we need to make sure that we also can grow if we need to. I think both of these facilities allows us to do that. The 10,000 square foot facility, board members, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Law, we could almost have a tenant for that immediately that would help, that would fit our needs, as well as provide services that the colleges we would want to do, something that we would want to be involved in.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow you. So the old campus building, you're saying you could lease out immediately?
My understanding is that we have some folks that are very interested in that facility immediately, that with retrofitting, they could be able to go into that building in a year.
We'd have to have a discussion with them, but there are a couple of initiatives that we think we can repurpose that building while we still control it then over time.
So you're gonna sublet it, or you're gonna actually purchase it?
Well, we would purchase it now, and then we would sublet to other parties who bring in ancillary services. So one of the things is, one of the discussions we've had, it's a long way from the National University of Health Sciences, who is one of our partners at the University Partnership Center. They're looking for a site for a community clinic where they would actually set up and do some of that. They do chiropractic training. They need clinical space. We would just lease them space, let them build that clinic. It would bring an additional amenity to Midtown. They would get what they need. They're already one of our partners. Subsequent, I mean, if we outgrow our space in 3, 4, 5 years, we own the space then. We could make choices on our own flavor. We've had a number of people who have some interest in child care related services.
Yeah.
We have some, a number of things. I think we could put some beneficial programs in there as the landlord, control that space, not let it get away from us so that 3 or 4 years from now, when we're trying to expand programs, we have no place to go with it. So that would be that's my thinking. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but once it's gone is the problem.
And it seems like the housing authority is pretty desperate to get rid of it. They're not interested in being a landlord. They have a mandate from HUD that any facility is not making money or related to housing, that they got to get out. They need to get rid of the building or get rid of that particular piece of property. So, their mandates have changed, and they're looking to do something different. And it looks like maybe a perfect opportunity for that to come together in terms of us getting it without having to stretch too far financially.
You're now talking about the gym?
Well, the gym, and they own the gym and that 10,000 square foot facility we're in.
Right.
So we're talking about both of those facilities.
But they've indicated to you that they're losing money on both facilities?
No. They're losing money on the gym.
Okay.
And on our facility, they are, according to Mr. Iriahans, and my conversation with him, is that they're not really making money. They're breaking even on the other facility. I don't know how true
But if we
that
pull up
may.
stakes, they've got a
they've got a hole if we pull up
a building
stakes.
that they can't do anything with.
Mr. Brett.
Is the action today to give the authority to Dr. Law and his staff to enter into discussions?
Yes, sir. I think that's the action as opposed to.
I'd like to make that motion.
Is there a second for that motion? Second. It's been probably moving second on this item. All in favor signify by saying, is there any discussion, any more discussion on this? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposing. We'll move on if there, Dr. Law, so I think that gives you the authority you need to
Thank you,
at least
appreciate
talk
that.
to
Just,
Mr. Irians about it.
I appreciate that, that's helpful.
All right.
Financial report?
Morning.
The only
Excuse my
person
voice.
sicker than I is Doug Duncan.
Trying to be quick here. Last month, I brought you the estimated year end, and I just wanted to kind of close that out by showing you where we did actually end. I gave you some of the background facts I think were on the cover memo. We ended up with a surplus of about $175,000 for the year. I think more significantly, though, what I highlighted here on this chart is that our total fund balance is a little over $21 million, and our the unallocated portion of that is almost $13 million, $12.7 million. Now, that is net of the 19 million that we moved over into capital outlay, which is still parked over there for the Midtown and the Clearwater Library. So it's we're in total funds available, we're closer to 40, but. I think one of the things that we obviously at the end of the year we had to do a lot of spending, curbing our spending and so on, and we did withhold, one of the big numbers that I listed on your sheet there is that we did not spend a large portion of our capital outlay or our capital equipment funds for this year. We had a lot of sort of nice to haves in our budget, some one-time funds that we did not spend, and so we will be looking at those things again. For the current fiscal year, not a lot. The July report doesn't have a lot in it. It's very early in the year to look at any specific trends, but I did highlight a couple of things for July. Right as it stood at the end of July, and keep in mind we had not collected we had not finished our registration for the fall session, but at the time this information was pulled. We were about 1% below where our normal revenue trend is at this time of year. We normally have collected about 10% of our revenue budget at the end of July, and we're at about 9%. The total year-to-date revenue is down about 4%. I expect a lot of that to be made up when you look at the August, when we finish registration. Couple of issues there. One, we've already talked about the reduction in tuition due to the enrollment issue. But another one that we're dealing with this year is that a large portion of our program fund was moved to lottery, which we don't get till the last few months of the year. So you'll see our state funding is showing about $190,000 less in July than it did last year, even though total state revenue is about flat. So we'll get that money back at the end of the year, but it does give us an issue that we have to look at, that we'll be receiving about $200,000 less a month over the course of the first 6 or 7 months of the year. Total personnel expenses within budget. One thing I want to point out, and it's consistent with what Dr. Cooper said, is that our adjunct costs are down 9%, $107,000, just for that last part of the summer term, and we expect that trend to continue with the adjustments that they've made in the schedule. We're showing a $2.4 million surplus, a little bit less than we had at this time last year, but again, I expect that to be made up in August. And I'd be happy to answer any
questions? Members of the board?
Oops. Didn't mean to do that.
No questions? I think we have to go back, Dr. Law. I think we missed taking action on the personnel report, item G2. I think we missed that.
You need a motion for item G?
Yeah, I think we need a motion for item G, G1, A, 1 and A, and, yeah, 1A.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moving second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposing. We're down to our...
This is the last public hearing on the rule shift, okay? Don't
I'm
leave
going
me
to
now.
open the public hearing for the proposed changes to the Board of Trustees Rule Manual. Any public speakers? Any discussion from the board? I need a quorum before I get before we can move forward.
We almost made it.
We almost made it. I'll wait till one of these guys come back. It would be nice if the chairman and vice chairman could just do it, right?
Unilateral decisions.
Make the board secretary a voting
I think this is the longest that this has ever been open.
Yeah. I'm getting nervous, okay? You know,
Somebody might actually get up.
Make the votes, yeah.
Dr. Law?
Sir.
One of the things that did not make this agenda that was carried over from the last agenda was the board assignments to some of these varying thing, and Terry kind of reminded me that if we do it for the Institute, are we doing disservice? I'm not sure. The foundation, I'm sure, is one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if the museum is another one. Should we?
We probably should take that up before we leave if we could.
I'm happy to. I remember we were all hoping that we would have a full cadre so that we could spread
we're
the
looking
wealth.
for one more person.
I just don't want to
that was why we delayed it.
I do know that the people were interviewed this past week.
Okay, just so I can.
I just don't want to do a
maintain-
disservice to them if they're for representation at their meetings. The longer we kick the can down the road.
I'm happy to. Hope was that we could have everybody on board in August. We could get it all put together. Terry didn't leave, did he?
No.
Okay.
This has to be the longest that this has been open ever. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, here we
Mr.
go.
North makes a motion.
All in favor?
Mr. Norton makes, all in favor? All right, we'll move on to the president's report.
No, you need to get a motion on
I think that's the longest
That's
that's
it.
been open. I'll close the public hearing. We'll move on to the president's report.
You need to take a vote on those items. You need a motion for item
H and I.
H and I, yes, okay,
I think Mr. North gave the one for H,
okay.
and it was seconded by
I'm
by
fine, I
Captain
missed it.
Fine.
Okay,
Well, we can take up I. I don't know if we did
Okay.
I.
and again, those are fairly
Motion to
standard.
approve I.
Motion to approve. Aye,
Second.
1 and 2.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman, just a matter of course, they handed me a note that we did not take a motion for the retirement resolutions, so
Oh, my
if you would
bad.
do that, we'll be
Okay,
happy
can I
to
have a
do.
motion to take up the retirement resolutions?
So moved.
Second.
It's been probably moved in second. All in favor? No, any discussion on those? I know Terry may want to not accept one or something. It's been probably moved in second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We've done that. All right, we're now to the president's report. Sorry, gentlemen.
We were just having a brief discussion on, in the case of a number of our direct support organizations, the Lipa Ratner Museum, the Policy Institute, the Foundation, by their bylaws, we have to have a designee from this board to each of those groups. So, as we wake up here, the only ones that we have are Mr. Brett, who is both the Lipa Ratner and and now the Policy Institute, so maybe he should just do all of them.
All of them. That's what I was thinking too. Just increase his pay.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I had hoped that we would have a full cadre and we could get some. I've not put any effort in on it this
Why
month,
don't-
and before we put anyone,
Why don't we,
it's a
by
board
the next
matter,
meeting,
okay.
let's send it all of them around and
Let's
then
go
we
with
can,
proposal.
we can look at them. Let's look at them and then we can make a decision next month on who's gonna do what. And there may be some people that will volunteer at that time, then we can, if you would send them around to all of us, all of those direct support organizations, and then we can go from there.
I'll get it
Since we don't
structured
have
for
them
us,
in
okay.
front of us right now.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Dr. Law, I would like to add one, since we've already, we have to get some information back to the board members about the metrics surrounding the Midtown campus. I'd also like to revisit the financing of that the next meeting as
Okay.
well, if we could do that. Because I'd like to get, I'm not gonna try to do this in a vacuum with just you and I. I
No,
would
no,
like
no,
to see
let's-
where the board is
we'll
in
bring the whole
terms
deal.
of, and I provided Dr. Law with some data that there could be a cost savings by doing a sale leaseback. Or do we go ahead with the current financing that we already approved? But I would like to have a discussion centered around that while we are evaluating it, we should evaluate that as well, because times, some things have changed. Money is different out there now. We can borrow some other folks' money and pay it down over a shorter period of time. I don't want to sway the board one way or another. I just want to get a position from the board on where we should be going as a college if and when we decide to finance this thing.
So, my understanding was, though, originally the project did not need to be financed,
That's
that we had
correct.
funds available.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then you have a sale leaseback program that would allow us not to fund the project.
But I don't have a program. I just looked at different scenarios.
Okay.
And one of the
That's what I
scenarios,
meant.
yeah, exactly. One is because I don't want to, the media's here. I don't want them to write in the paper tomorrow that Ron
No.
Gibbons has a plan.
I had started the discussion on a sale leaseback
Exactly.
a year ago.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
would be, because there's no more PICO money, so if we
Yeah.
want to do this. Then we got to
where we had the money.
December, January, and we were nervous about protecting some accumulated revenues we had, so we kind of shifted gears. But now that we have the luxury of a little more time, I just want to bring it back to say to the board and
agree.
get board discussion. Borrow some money at incredibly low rates, or spend our own money and move forward with the project. Project cost is about the same. There's some cost savings over time. I think the sale leaseback has some attractiveness.
the other side is, if you don't take on any debt, there's some attractiveness to that
That
too.
as well.
So I think we can structure a board discussion on that.
But I would just like for the board to give clear direction to Dr. Law and have all the facts on both sides. And staff, I'd really like for us to do that so that we can get this put to bed and move forward, or not, okay? Our next board meeting is September 18th at the Seminole campus. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.